គ្នាយើង master ជួយ check មើលអ្នកចូលរួមអ្នកពួកគាត់អត់ចូលចឹង
ចាលោកគ្រូ
Okay. Do you see my screens? So actually this course last year when I teach I do not prepare the slide. I just give you the note and then I explain them in some detail on whiteboard. But this I was in Belgium now. I am in Belgium now, so I have prepared some slide, but it's not perfect. It's just like a preparation and let you know clearly what I'm going to tell you. And also in some point is about the information that in the general way, it's not a specific way. So to introduction to the class, I would like to because everyone know my name, but just only Anton that you don't know about my name yet. So my name is Pich Reatrey. Currently, I am a PhD student that conducting my research as a double degree between ITC and University of Namibia in Belgium. Okay, let me go to the introduction to the course. If you have any question or concern, you can stop me and ask me the questions. So our course have been named that modeling and simulations, and we provide this course in order to let our students to go around some idea about the way they can we model the systems, and after that the reason why we have to make a modeling. After we model our systems and our proposed system have to be simulated before we try to produce the real system. So what is the cost that we need in order to simulate our systems? In our course, we have like 16 hours for the coursework, and after that we have like a 16 hours for the TP class. So during our practical class is about the way that I try to assign all of you to work with some system, try to model something, and then you produce the result. And this is like a 2 credits class. We will start our time in the morning, and for the TP class we will go to the afternoon. But for the afternoon class, if you don't like to divide the groups into 2 sessions, we can join all together just only one session, because actually we conduct it online. Everyone can be joined at the same time. But if you feel that it's not really appropriate to join it the same time for all people in one time, you can separate into sessions. It is up to you. I will follow up with the master about that. So if you decide to join together in the class, just only one session, we will start one session all together. No need to divide into 2 sections. And the lecturer name in the system is Mr. UND, but I am actually the one that will be responsible for your class. So for evaluation in our systems, and we focus on the assignment. Every typical class for TP assignment in the class will be correct directly inside the class. After the class, you will have the extra words to be the assignment, or to be the like homework for you to do, and then you have to submit to the systems. So if typically in the class, if I give you TP, actually I have to let you do it, and we will discuss inside the class, and you have to submit your TP. But as we are conducting it is online, so all the class that we will make for the assignment for TP, we will correctly during the class and explain you some point. After that, at the end of the class, we will have the extra work to be your assignment to do you by yourself and submit to the systems. So the score that we conducted with assignment is 20% of your total score. Class activity. So mostly, as you know, in my class, I will focus on the way that you try to interact and work as a group inside class, and also have the interaction about the Q&A sessions. So I will give the priority to the score as the class activity 20%. Your attendance automatically generate attendance list in the system. So after we finish 16 hours in our class, we will generate the score about 10% of the class. And finally, about the final exam and projects. Because actually in this case, I do not make a midterms, but you will have some surprise quiz during the class and without inform. So you will have the last exam as a final and then the project. So in this case, because our course mostly based on theory, so final exam, some case I don't make it. I will combine it to be as a project in order to let all of you to do it. So the score will be conducted with 50%. For the rule in our class, can you mute yourself, please? I don't know. I don't know one with unmute yourself. So please mute first. So for the rule in our class, no excuse. In this case, it means that every year I always face the student that okay, they say that your class is in Saturday, so I don't have time to join your class because I have the extra job in the weekends. I'm not sure about this rule, so if you cannot join like 100% in the class, you have to inform your issue to our department, so we will try to find a solution for all of you. We cannot let you say that okay, you cannot join and then you don't join the class for the whole session and then you have the permission to take exam, you can pass as order. So this class we have no rule anymore. So in this case, this year for my course, we do not accept the excuse from all of you about that case anymore. After that, if you absent more than 3 times of the course or in debate times, you will fail automatically in my course. And in my course, I don't want to have like a resit exam. So it means that if the final score in the system appear that you are failed in my course, it means that you automatically this year you will fail this course, and then if criteria low than 30 score, you will automatically retraptas. It means that you will continue your study again 1 more year. So this is a rule that I try to create. So please pay attention. All the course I will conduct is just only the theory one. So it's not like a practical that you have to do something seriously in coding, in implementing. Actually, you need your coding because we try to model something. You need coding, but just like a basic one. We will tell you that what is the modeling or what is the tool that we will use. So any questions? If you would like to ask me, you can chat directly to the telegrams. I think Antoine, you can ask some member about my telegram. If you have telegram, you can contact directly, or you can use Microsoft Teams to contact to me. So based on our rule and our time and our lessons, do you have any questions or concerns so far about that?
Not so far. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, and the other. Okay, អ្នកផ្សេង
លោកគ្រូ
មានសំណួរមានច
អឺ
ងល់អីអត់មានបញ្ហាអីអត់បាទ
លោកគ្រូខ្ញុំចង់សួរពីចំណុចលេខ3មិញតិចលោកគ្រូអាហ្នឹងដូចជា no reside exam ណាអាហ្នឹងសំដៅទៅលើយើងតោះតែយើងបានបន្ទុកហ្នឹងលើ30%មែនលោកគ្រូ
for example no revisit exam actually for example if after the test or final in this course for example you get like a 45 score and the other subject you also less than the margin. After we calculate the margin of every cost, you are less than 50. So it means that you have to take some cost to be a receipt class, receipt exam. So you can take the other cost of other lecturer, but not mine. My cost you will get automatically from the original score that you have. ចឹងនៅក្នុងត្រង់ចំណុចនេះនៅពេលដែលគ្នាយើងបានបន្ទុកទៀប5ទៅឬក៏3 4ខុសចឹងមានន័យថាពេលយើងបុកមួយយ៉ែនទៅបន្ទុករបស់យើងទៀបជាងមួយយ៉ែនចឹងឈ្មោះរបស់យើងត្រូវប្រឡងសងនៅខុសមួយចំនួនដែលបន្ទុកទៀបជាងមួយយ៉ែនហើយចឹងប្រឡងសងសំណួរសួរថាអ្នកអាចប្រឡងសងមុខវិជ្ជាអីខ្លះមុខវិជ្ជាផ្សេងទាំងអស់គ្នាអាចប្រឡងសងបានបើមិនគ្រូគេអនុញ្ញាតឲ្យប្រឡងសងប៉ុន្តែមុខវិជ្ជារបស់ខ្ញុំអ្នកទាំងអស់គ្នាទទួលបានមកបន្ទុកនៅក្នុង final score មិនទោះបីអ្នកនរគ្នា resit exam final score នៅតែប៉ុណ្្នឹងដែរទេយល់ទេត្រង់ចំណុចនេះគ្នាយើងម្ចាស់សំណួរ
អត់តាន់ច្បាស់លើគ្រូដូចនេះស្ពេចទៅ
ជាធម្មតាចេះនៅពេលដែលយើងបន្ទុកមួយយ៉ែនយើងទៀបអញ្ចឹងយើងមិនត្រូវប្រឡងសងមិនអញ្ចឹងទេឧទាហរណ៍នៅក្នុង cost របស់ខ្ញុំអញ្ចឹងមួយយ៉ែនរបស់យើងបានត្រឹមតែ40ទេអញ្ចឹងជាធម្មតាប្រសិនបើករណីបន្ទុកបាន40ហើយមួយយ៉ែនរួមរបស់យើងបានលើស50អត់បញ្ហាទេយើងអត់បាច់ប្រឡងសងទេក៏ប៉ុន្តែបើសិនករណីបន្ទុកមួយយ៉ែនរួមយើងបានតិចជាង50ហើយបន្ទុកក្នុងខុសរបស់ខ្ញុំបាន40អញ្ចឹងក្នុងខុសរបស់ខ្ញុំត្រូវតែប្រឡងសងក៏ប៉ុន្តែដោយសារ rule របស់យើងវាអត់មានការប្រឡងសងទេអញ្ចឹងបន្ទុករបស់យើងទោះបីប្រឡងសងឬមិនប្រឡងសងបន្ទុករបស់យើងគឺនៅតែ40ដដែលអញ្ចឹងប្រសិនបើអ្នកទាំងអស់គ្នាអត់មានប្រឡងសងមុខវិជ្ជាអីផ្សេងក្រៅពីមុខវិជ្ជារបស់ខ្ញុំទេមានន័យថាបន្ទុករបស់យើងគឺច្បាស់ជាធ្លាក់ 100% យល់ទេ
បានលោកគ្រូបាទអរគុណច្រើនលោកគ្រូ
លោកគ្រូសុំសួរមួយចុះអ្នកដែល miss class first class នេះដោយគាត់ទៅចាក់វ៉ាក់សាំងមិនដែរលោកគ្រូ
បញ្ហាដោយបញ្ញរដ្ឋអីក៏សុំច្បាប់ខ្ញុំ
ហ្នឹងហើយគាត់ទៅចាក់វ៉ាក់សាំងលោកគ្រូ
sorry okay in this case I just try to example for you so if you have like average of our class equal to, sorry I can say that less than 50 so all the costs that you have scored less than 50 you have to take recit exams so if you will have the recit exam in our course when you have a recit exams you get the other scores that maximum is 50 but except my course that we will know have the recit exam so however we make a recit exam your score will get originally the same as the score that we put in the systems for example if modeling and simulation in final score you got only 40 so however we take a recit exam your score still be 40 and if you cannot finish the recit exam from the other course to pass your semester so it's mean that you will study again next year okay okay do you have the other questions about our course so for our course for the first lessons I take the reference from Mr. William Menner, so it's a bit old document. So you can check his name about his publications. So you will get information from for the first question, for the first introduction course, and we also provide a slide material to you during the class, so you can take it. And I would like to say in advance that for the class material, I will provide to you after the class because I cannot prepare it on time. So every class session, you will get the slide material. You cannot get it before the class. I would like to say sorry. And as experience, most of the students say that, teacher, can you provide us the material before the class? I try to finish everything for the class in advance and give them all the material, but it is useless. They never check the material. They wait until the class start, and then every I try to explain, and then you just try to know during the class. You don't pay attention to check in advance. So if you don't have any questions, so I try to continue to the class directly. Okay, so for our class, for the first sessions is about the introduction to the class. We don't have like a specifically way to define the course, that the structure must be like a technical one, just only the theory part. So in our introduction part, we will cover some point about introduction to our course, about definition, about the concept of the modeling and simulation systems. And after that, we try to provide you about the use of modeling and simulation, its role in our computer science course, some use case that why we use modeling and simulations, and currently why those kind of case still need modeling and simulations. And one thing about advantage is of the modeling and simulations to solve some problem or some case, even in the development task or our research task. And the last one is just conclusions. So as you see in this pick up the slide about definitions. So if you've, and before I try to start the definition, I just would like to inform again, even the Cambodian students. So if you cannot listen me well and you don't understand, you can interrupt me directly, immediately, and then stop me, say, teacher, I don't understand this point, and you can ask me the question directly. Do not wait until we finish the class, or after the class you can still ask me. Okay? ចឹងសម្រាប់សិស្សខ្មែរគ្នាយើងបើសិនបើករណីអ្នកនរស្ដាប់អត់បានអង់គ្លេសខ្ញុំតុងអញញ៉ៃពេក I speak too fast អ្នកនរគ្នាអាចឈប់ខ្ញុំភ្លាមសួរខ្ញុំត្រង់ចំណុចអ្នកគ្នាអត់យល់អូខេគ្នាយើង So about the definitions, if we talk about the modeling and simulations, so if I say that modeling is disciplines or the rule that we try to understand something, so and in order to evaluate the interaction of the part of the real or theoretical system. Normally, our systems, some system is the real one, and we try to evaluate it. So how can we evaluate it? In some company, when, for example, I am the one that work in software engineering company, so I try to develop one system or one application. When I try to evaluate that system, I always take, okay, give the system or application to the tester, and tester try to test and debug everything in the system. So your evaluation is made by tester. But in some case, you cannot provide testings to customer. You have to show them some diagram. You have to show them some representations term. So the way that you try to evaluate and so to the customer about something that can represent to the real system. However, our system is a theoretical system or real systems. So the way that you try to represent it by something. So those one we call modeling. And then after that, you will try to execute it in the way of the human. For example, if you run during this process, you get the result like this ones. If you run through this process and with this input, you will get the result as this one. So something about this way to get the result or outputs, and it's not running from the real system, so it's called simulations. To simulate your system to see the result, to show you, to show it to your customer, to understand about the process of your system and the outputs and input and output of your system. So this is the definitions of the modeling system. So our system can be like a real one. If focus about modeling, we focus about the representations. And if you say about simulation, we can say that it's about the executing, or we can say that executations, executing, running, or manipulating. You can see the figure one. This figure I pick up from the neural network. So for the one that already joined the course of artificial intelligence, that you learn machine learning algorithm, so you will know about this structure. So when we talk about one model or one system, so in this case, the system have been made by using neural network. So we have like input layer, hidden layer, and output layer. And our system, we have like a 7 input, and then we get 2 output. In this case, I would like to say that our system is about classification systems. We have like a 7 input property or attribute, and then we try to classify into class y1 and y2. So the way that I draw the mechanisms of the system as the figure ones. So this is one thing that I can represent my real system to you as the customer, or just like to you as a trap version of the system before we make an experiment or developing. So when you see something like that, it is a kind of real system. It's like a real classification system. So I can show you about this model. After that, when I try to execute, for example, I give some values to x1 until x7, and then we try to execute step by step to show the result of y. So it means that I can make a model of the real system and show you about the result of it. So we call it like modeling one system as a real part of the systems, and then make evaluation of it. In our case, we use neural network as a classification system. So this is one example of the real system. Do you know about Dr. Strange? Did you watch this movie already?
Yes, teacher.
Okay, so every system, some system is not the real one, it's just like imaginations. So in this case, we have one system is about the human teleport. Human teleport is mean that, for example, currently you are in Cambodia, so if you would like to come to Europe, so how can you do? You have to take fly, right? So the system that the plane have been made is the real system. You can simulate that. Okay, you go to the airport, you take the plane, and then you fly from Cambodia to Europe. So this is a real system. But if you imagine something that is not really happen in the real world, but you can see inside in the movie. For example, this one is Doctor Strange. They can teleport in the space. So can you imagine that? How can they teleport? How can they move from one place to the other place? So if I ask you to model the system, so how can you model it from the start? Okay, I have the input and I have the system. The input is humans, and then output is human in one place, and then output is the human in the other place. For your system, you have to teleport the human. So this is not a real system. You cannot teleport one person from one place to the other place. It's just a theory or imagination in a movie. You have seen in the movie that you have the magic machine that can teleport one human to the one place to the other place. So this is one like a theoretical that you try to represent one systems that is not the real one. You just your imaginations, and then you try to show this case to your audience. For example, you try to make a movie. So your movie you have to have model something for example the Star Wars. You have some weapons that it's not the real one. It's just like a magic one that in the real world it cannot happen. So before you try to manipulate those kind of thing, first of all you have to imagine that how the system work, how those kind of things something work. So you will draw the process how does it work, and so that represent process to someone. So representation of the process that you have made and so to the other one, we call it a model. After that you try to tell them or try to inform to them that okay, if you let someone do something like this you will get result like this. It means that you try to execute or you try to run your model to show about the process how does it work. So this is the distinction between the real system like a some theoretical system or not like a not real systems. And in the other definitions about modeling a system is about the constitute of the powerful method for designing. In this case, it's like try to model something. It means that you try to construct the abstract of the system, the represent method of the system, a model that can cover the whole system. So we call this is the modeling. And simulation is the way that you try to run and then make an evaluation for the complex systems. And so the process detail to your customer or your audience about the way you try to develop or the state of art of your work. For example, currently I am a researcher, and as a researcher, I cannot start immediately and then build a system to show to you. So in the first step of the researcher, I try to identify the problems, and after that, I try to gather the related information that we call it investigation state, that you try to make a literature review, and after that you try to propose the solutions. So in the proposed solutions you can just write only some text and then show to them, but for like a technically you can draw some diagram or you can draw the design or the model of the system that you try to propose to solve the problem of your research. So in those cases, we need the modeling. So our researcher, if you are work in like IoT term and then you work in the task of building of some software or system, so you have need this cost to make the modeling to your system. So this is the first step that you try to do, is like you try to build the abstract of your solution and try to solve the problem. After that, when you try to explain to your idea, for example, as a researcher, you have to defend your proposal, your solutions to the committee, for example, your advisor or the other university committee. So you present to them. The way that you present to them is mean that you try to show them about your solutions, and your solution come up with your proposed model. And then for the model, it's just only the representation of your solution. So how can they understand that your model can solve the problem? So you try to run or execute it in the human way of imagination to see the result, and you just try to predict or guess, if you have input like this you will get the result like this. But for the technical term or like a scientific term, you can make it as imaginations, but you have to have a reference or hypothesis in your system to confirm and convince them that okay, if you produce this kind of system you will get the result like A and B, for example. So in this definition, modeling is about constructing abstract, And then about simulation is about facilitating the experiment or assessment to the systems. Sometimes we do not be able to run your system, so we just only make assessment. For example, in our proposed system or this kind of model, the input that I will have to put in my system A and B, for example. After that, in our system, we have a group of this function. So it is called the assessment to the system. You just only tell them about the functionality, but the way they work inside, you cannot build it yet because it's just the first modeling. You do not start to develop it yet. It's just assessment. And after that, you provide them the expected result that you will get after running this system. It's not a real one, it's just a predicted one. So this case, we call that system assessment. You try to make a literature review from related work that they already have done related to some current solution that they use, and then you just make a reference to them, and then you can take the result to show to your audience about the systems. I see. um because I do not open the Microsoft Team the same part parallel time, so if anyone have the question, please unmute yourself and then you just ask directly. So before I goes to the system, I would like all of you to watch one video about how can I model a systems. Do you can you hear the voice?
No, teacher.
Wait a bit. So let me share the screen again by input the include the voice. Now, do you hear the voice?
Yeah, teacher.
Yes.
Okay, let's watch some like a TV show or group of the way that we try to model one thing. So this is a monitoring and managing traffic in the real time, and we use like a microscopic about the way that try to model one traffic systems. For example, in Phnom Penh, how can you go from one place to the other place? You like basically you use like a Google map, and then the Google map try to suggest you the route from one place to the other place, or the best route, like a less traffic jam the most. So this is the one thing that I try to show you. Is this a kind of the modeling and simulate the system. Okay, let's see the video. In this case, they use one tool in order to evaluate the traffic in the system. First of all, they will have to input the map of one city. After that, they have to detect the edge of the route, and then they show the current traffic. So they distinguish by the color of the image. And then you see that, okay, from this city, you have a lot of route. After that, other paths have different traffic situations. Actually, these ones have no voice. Okay, based on this video, what I would like to show you, in some case, when you try to produce some products to your customer, for example, build one system to control the traffic in one city, you cannot take like a whole city simulation with CCTV cameras to your customer. So you try to simulate. So in this case, it's just use the like geography methods to capture all the city map. After that, you use some plugins or some API. For example, I use Google API to see the current traffic. So the way that they try to model one system and show you in this kind of picture, we call modeling. After they run the experiment of this system, it's not the real one, but just try to show you like, okay, the experiment about the current status of the traffic in our city. So this is a kind of simulation to show the result to you. So this is a kind of the way that modeling system and simulation the system can be worked or can be used in the real world. Sorry. So when we talk about modeling and system, we always focus that, okay, teacher, if I use this, what is the useful that I can get the benefit from this course or this kind of technique? So in this case, when we try to manage something, or in case that you try to experiment also some system that you don't develop it yet, or you can develop it, or sometimes you cannot develop it. For example, if I make a simulation, the advantage of modeling is about you can test multiple aspects. What does it mean in this case? Um, I am in the chemical systems, so I try to make a system about atomic explosion. So in the real world, you can make a simulate, but it costs too much. It's too dangerous to let you test those kind of things. So how can you solve the problem to show your experiment to your customer or your audience? You cannot, okay, you bring some atomic or chemical substance and then you take it to show your customer and make it explode. No, you cannot. It's too dangerous. So in this case, you can use kind of model and then make a simulation to show you to your customer to reduce some dangerous case. So this means that you can test multiple aspects, however it's dangerous or not dangerous. And then after that, when you try to model something, you will be able to identify that what will be the inputs to your systems, what is the parameter, which parameter stand for the fact as a factor inside your system. So if I try to say that parameter and factor, the definition is the same, that this is the inputs, but the difference is if we just would to say that parameter is the input that you will make it into your system. You do not identify how effective this kind of parameter to the system. But if I say that it is a factor, the factor is one of like a sensitive parameter to the system. What does it mean, sensitive parameter? Factor is a kind of sensitive parameter that affect to the system effectively. What does it mean? That if you change something to the parameter, will be affect to the whole system change. For example, just give this value of input as a factor. It means that if you change some value of this value, the result you will get completely different. So we call it as a factor. And if the definition parameter factor is the same, factor is only sensitive parameter. So when you can build some model and you can build some system representations, you can identify appropriate resource that we will use in your system. This is the advantage of using modeling work. After that, you can speed up the process and better observation and predictions. What does it mean, speed up the process? When you try to model one system, it means that it seems to be like you try to build one building and you construct the architecture of the building. So you know every part of your building. It's not the real building yet, but you know every part of it. So you can speed up the process. So you can, okay, which one that I should start first? And then after that, so what is the resource that I need? So you know everything when you try to model one, if you can model one system already. So you can speed up the process to build those kind of things. The same case as the developer. If you build one system, before you build your system, you try to build your prototype. So the prototype we call as one kind of model system. When you try to build prototype, you will know every aspect of your prototype. You will know every API that you use in your systems. You will know every input in your system. So when you try to develop your system to be the real one, it will be easy for you to develop it. You can speed it up the way that you try to develop it. And after that, you will know that, okay, if you run these functions, you will get this result. Every aspect of your proposed system before development, you will know everything. However, it's not 100 accurate, but at least you know something about the input and the result of some feature inside your modeling. And after that, one kind of thing is about the way that you try to identify the constraint in complex system. However, the system is not complete or complex. For example, in Europe, in recognition systems, for example, license plate recognition systems, you just, for example, I use linear function. It's just only example. I use linear functions try to identify the recognitions of the license plate in French, for example. So it works, and then it gives you the accuracy like 99%. But it doesn't mean that when you take this kind of system or this kind of rule to apply in Cambodia, you will get the same result. Because we are in some different situation and some different inputs. So the way that we try to identify that the same system that provide with different inputs or conditions, you will get different result. So those kind of things mean that you try to identify the condition or constraint of your system by using modeling and simulations. And the other thing is about creating a visualization. In some case, 100% you cannot make the real systems. For example, human teleport, you cannot make a real system. So how can we show some ideas to your customer or your audience? It's just only one thing that you will have to make as the visualization. One case, actually, you can make it into the real system. I asked you to build cloud processing, but in order to build cloud for your private company, you will need a lot of requirement material, and those cost so much money. And then for your testing case, you cannot take the real product to show you to your customer. You just only be able to use some simulation tool and make it as the visualization. For example, you run one cloud platform or cloud material. For example, you use like some microservice to build cloud. For example, you use Kubernetes. So if you build it into the physical server systems, it costs so much money that you try to buy some hardware product and then make a simulation. So if inside the class, if teacher asks you to do like that, one thing that you can do is just only visualization. You try to run it in the software simulations. You use, for example, you use VMware and then you try to deploy the Kubernetes in Docker, for example. So those kind of things just visualization is not the real one, but it's very useful because you can represent the real systems into those kind of things that benefits so much. You spend less, and then you can show the real system to your audience customer. And for the last, not the last point, for the last line, define the parameter and need it carefully. It's the same as the third and the fourth ones. When you can model something and you know every aspect inside your model, so the way that you know about the input, some parameter, some constant in your system, so you can define it clearly what is the input for the current environment that you set to your systems. If I try to give some different constraint, for example, license plate detection in the rainy season, So we have the obstacle, the interference from the environment. This is the kind of constraint or condition that you try to make for your system. So this is the way that you try to scope your project, make it into some constraint to limit about the limitation of the process or system environment to make it work effectively. However, it's really useful, but sometimes it's not useful in some case. For example, you make a prediction for the system. The way that you say predictions, it cannot be guaranteed 100% that it will happen. So the way to convince your customer, the way to convince your audience, you say that if you use my system with this kind of input, you will get the result. And they will ask you that how you current in your work. How can you make sure that your work 100% is sure it's the same as what you say? So modeling in simulations is just a tool to try to visualize your system. So we cannot make sure that 100 will be accurate as what we say. For example, you say that if we develop this system, you will be able to solve these problems. But when in the real work and you try to develop it, you cannot get the real answer or the real result as you expect. So this is one disadvantage of the system. And the other some case, you said that your container can cover the explosion of the atomic. You make it in the modeling. You say that okay, it work and it can protect the explosion of the atomic. But in the real case, when the atomic it explodes, it make your container and make some dangerous. So this is the result that modeling and simulation is not guaranteed in the real world, in some case only. So you have to be careful in some dangerous tasks before you make a modeling and simulation. And you have to write down every risk calculations. So in terms of project management, we also make some risk calculations for your system. For example, you try to build one applications and then you will propose your application to your customer with the expense. So you always put 10% of your expense to be risk cover. So if you don't have any risk, you will gain 10% of your request budget. But if you face some risk, you will have like a 10% of your budget to cover those kind of risks. So this is the way that in project management, we always focus on those kind of things. And in the other thing is about the same concept produce different results. Like I make an example for you. For example, in Asian systems and in Europe system for agriculture, you said that okay, my system and my tool that I use in Europe, it work well and then can produce the best result of the systems. It doesn't mean that the same system and the same input and concept go to my country, you will produce the same result. In some case, for the technical term, okay, this is the same result. Okay, let me say something that is not about the technical. For example, about the government, they have some rule in the government that use in Europe country and it work. But if you take those kind of strategy to apply in some Asian country, it doesn't mean that it will work the same as Europe's. Sometimes it's provide different outputs. So however, we use the same strategy and you use the same rule in different location and different environments, it can produce some different result. So the way that you try to model and simulate those kind of things, you cannot get 100% sure about the result. And in some case, the resource consumptions, it doesn't go well with the problems. What does it mean is those kind of things? Like I said previously, when you try to identify some problem and you try to propose one model, they have some condition and some constraint that you identify, and after you make identification, you will be able to set what is the resource that you need to simulate one system. But when you try to deploy in the real world, for example, you try to identify running one applications, you said that when you run these applications, you will need only this amount of computer resource. But in the real practical, when you use only those kind of resource, you cannot run your applications. So this is one of disadvantage of try to model something, but the real world it doesn't work. So you will have a lot of extra, but I just say point. So they have the other disadvantage of the system. So how can you know about the other disadvantage? Some case you will know while you make experimentations. So in our course, we also have one lecture about experiment design. So I do not make it deeply into technical term. Actually, for the experimental design, we will use some machine learning algorithm. So I would like to ask all of you that for the course of AI, do you start it already or not yet?
Not yet, teacher.
Because the previous year I tried to teach them, but I need the course AI to start first, because when you can start machine learning algorithm, so I do not need to explain you about some term about the machine learning algorithm, so you just use it directly. But if you do not start it yet, it will be a bit difficult for you to understand the concept of our simulation tool. So we will make it later by conduct some basic. I'm not the one that's skillful in machine learning. I just only know some concepts, so I will share my experience to you, and then after sharing, we can conduct our course by using those kind of tool. So if you can go to learn in advance, so in our course we will use linear functions to conduct a modeling and simulations. So if you can learn it in advance, I will not provide some description of the linear in the course. We can start directly to our modeling system, the way that we try to design experiment and then make experimentations. But if you don't know it yet, and you say that, teacher, can you make some introductions to the linear function first before we can start the experiment design and implementations? Okay, I will take some short time to give introduction. I'm not skillful in linear, just only give you some introduction to linear function, and then we can understand some concept, and then we can make our system work. So about the concept of the modeling and simulations. So the main concept of modeling simulation is about proof of the concept. It means that we try to pre-design one kind of test and make prediction. It means that to prove your concept, will it work or not in the present or explanation way. It's not the real work yet. So this is the kind of the purpose that we try to make a modeling and simulation. And the other one is modification. What does it mean? So when you try to build some application or system or software, normally some term you build from scratch. It means that you start from zero if the system is not exist yet. But if it exists already, so what will we do? So for example, some our computer and student, you focus on web development in for e-commerce. So currently in the real market, e-commerce everywhere. Why do you still to you build new e-commerce system? Because your own need. So you can use like a model, one model to represent the current e-commerce system, and then you try to modify something of current system. So this is one kind of thing of the purpose of the modeling and simulation is about modification, you try to identify or modify existing by adding the new concept, adding new thing to make your system different from the other. So this is the other concept that we try to use modeling and simulations. And the other thing is about comparisons, because our system is not developed yet. Our system not the real one yet. So how can you compare your proposed solution to the other existing one? So you can draw the model from the existing one and you draw the model your proposed solution. After that, you take those model to evaluate it. And then you compare two model, be able to compare. So in this case, it is the third purpose of building modelations. And after that is about optimization. Actually, to solve one problems, they have a lot of solutions. For example, I feel hungry. So my purpose is that to complete or to eliminate the word hungry from my stomach. So how can I provide the solutions? I can eat, I can drink. So the manner or solution you can use, you have many ways. You can drink and you can eat. So in order to find the solution, when we have many solutions, actually many solution, all solution is usable, but you can get different result. So in those kind of term, but our cost, we do not focus in this one. We have the other cost is optimization cost. Optimization cost is mean that if there are many solutions, we try to find the optimal solution. It means that the one is the best of the best. Best of the best is mean that one of the best solution among many solutions. So when we able to compare the system, so we can pick up one solutions or pick up one system which is the optimal system for your proposal. So this is one concept that we try to produce by working with modeling and simulations. This is like a kind of application category that we will use for modeling and system. So about our case, do we have a modifications? In our case study, during 16 hours of our course, we will focus only the point number 1 and the point number 3. I cannot let all of you build system and then make modifications. So we just only ask you to prove some concept, and after that you compare your current proposal to the existing proposed solutions. Why I pick up number 1 and number 3? Because our work, we will focus on a theory part. So in our theory part, this course is like a fundamental course that let you or ask someone that after graduate your degree, you go to work in the company and then you try to build some system. So before you build some system, you will make a draft of your system. So it will be like useful for those kind of people. And the other useful, more advantage is about the people that try to continue your work and then you try to for fill the application to apply and you have to build a proposal. So one kind of thing that you can convince the committee to provide you the scholarship or admission inside school is kind of thing is about the way you try to write a proposal. In kind of proposal, you will be able to provide the solutions or your proposed solution to the current problem that you would like to make a research. And then you can make a comparison by using modeling and simulation by, okay, current problem that we face is this kind of problem. And some researcher, they propose some different solution and you pick up their solution by make a model, and then after that you optimize the existing model to be your optimal one, and then you propose that, okay, this is my new proposal model and this model can solve the problem effectively if we compare from the existing one. So our course aim to be like that. Okay, this is kind just only one picture that show you about the way that we try to make a concept of modeling in system. So for example, we have one system. It's just only one model of system. So our model of system represented by function of mathematics f something. So in our case, we have y equal to f of x and p. So this equation is mean that our system represented by one mathematical formula, and our input is x and p. So what is the difference between x and p? Actually, x and p all call the same parameter, but we try to distinguish that parameter in p is the fixed parameter that not provided by the audience or the other customer. It's just like a fixed parameter that we build in system, and then we have the other input. For example, if I have y like a line equations, we have y equal to ax plus b. So we have x as input and you have a and b parameter. So those kind of a b is mean like you can give as the input from the user, or you can give as a constant value in the system. So just distinguish. After that, you will give the output y. So this is a kind of simulation tool. You can first the easiest one, you just draw a picture like this, and after that you just say okay, what f represent for. So f, if it's a line linear one, you can say okay, our f x and p equals to ax plus p, for example, and a is contents and p just parameter. This is a concept of represent one system, and you can explain this operation is to your customer. For example, they have many kind of the model. You have the physical one, we have like a mathematical one, and you have the process one. So I do not describe all kind of model to you. And if you ask me, teacher, how many model method? There are a lot. I can say a lot. And for example, in this case, just pick up only three the way of model that we try to use. One, modeling can be made by using mathematics or physics. Like in the previous system of the lines, I use kind of mathematic ones like linear equations, y equal to ax plus b. So sometimes you can just use mathematic formula to represent your system. So for example, if your system is about calculation, so your system will be represented by one mathematical formula or two combination of mathematical formula. So we call it a mathematical model. And in mathematical, you have different form. For example, in this case, you have the discrete. It's just to segment the value that try to make a convolution summation. So this is kind of the discrete model. But if it's about integration, or inference or intermediate, we call integral. So this is a kind of like a continuous model. It means that you make a simulation of your system with the continuous value input. For example, you build one system for the real-time camera capture video, and then you have the video input as a real system. So this is a continuous input as a video real-time processing. So we have like a continuous model. But some system you cannot represent in mathematical or physical way. For example, the one that work out with the website development. So in some website, you can represent the flow by drawing some diagram or process. So those kind of things we call process modeling. By you draw activity diagram, you draw use case diagram, so to represent your system. So this is kind of the concept of the model. About the simulation, sometimes can be the be like it means like, for example, you try to simulate one and then it's not a real application yet. For example, I use MATLAB to write one mathematical equation to represent one systems, and then I can simulate for you in the real time. For example, I use try to build one system capture with the video censoring or video capturing camera. So in the real-time video, I capture it directly with the real time, but I simulate it in MATLAB as input from camera. So it can be like executing. Sometimes it's a visualization. If visualization is something that you cannot run in the real world. For example, I ask you to build one private cloud and you use Docker and Kubernetes to build those kind of your cloud as a visualizations. You do not build in the real servers side. So we call it visualizations. About constructive simulation is about, okay, step by step that you try to, okay, to combine to one complete system. There are many subsystems. For example, if you are working in the algorithms, one man application, you have many sub feature or sub function inside. So when you try to simulate it one by one, for example, before we can run the whole system, first of all, you have to run these functions. After the first function, you have to run the second function. So you construct it consequently. We call it the constructive simulations. And if you ask me that they have the other kind of method, yes, they have. And I can show you only this. So if you first or you meet the other condition of the kind of model, you can say it. So about the role of you modeling and simulation, this kind of thing, I just only identify with the software quality. So in the other term, we have something different role. So the role of modeling and simulation is about its operational attribute. So we try to define what is the attribute in our proposed system. In this case, we focus on the software. So it is attribute of your software. The role of modeling system is provide the operational attribute in our software. After that, it's a combination of the chain. Normally, when we try to make a model, they have the constraint to set up the condition or environment of your system. So you will be able to observe your process of your application. So you will be able to observe or identify the change of your systems and its capacity to adapt to the new environment. For example, when you try to simulate one system in one environment, after that you can get a result of one consumption. For example, when you run it in one simulation environment, after that you get the result from the first experiment and running, second experiment and running result. You can make assumption is and you can show up the capacity of your system to adapt to the new environment. So this is the role of modeling and simulation that we provide to identify the software qualifications. So what is the utilization of modeling and simulations? Normally, there are many use cases that you try be able to use, but in our computer science, normally we try to for the development procedure. For some development procedure, you will work with some course. You will learn about research methodology. So those kind of research methodology is one thing that you can conduct with the modeling and simulations. And some case in project management, you will use some modeling or project management. For example, waterfall, you use Scrum, you use Agile. So those kind of things is the kind of way that you try to manage your project. And how about what factor that we can apply and what is the functionality or a property or the thing that can you evaluate your modeling and simulation to be the result to confirm with your customer. So when you try to identify the qualification of one model and make a simulation of it, your result must contain this kind of criteria. So I just try to explain something. I do not, you can read by yourself actually. So auditability means that, okay, I just say it general. When you try to propose one model to someone, you will try to confirm that your model is qualified. So how can say that qualify? I just give one example. I am like agency of product transporting company. It means that agency that you can send your product from one place to the other place. Sorry, please mute yourself first. So if you would like to send one product from one place to another place, and then you can confirm with your process in your system. So original product from the sender, the receiver must get the same product and the same quality. And your system, actually it's system it's about the portal one. Portal one is mean that if I run in this kind of experiment, when I try to change environment, your proposed system or proposed solution have to be able to modify, audit it. And for example, if I work about the chemical one, your system have to be secure. So this kind of the criteria to evaluate the modeling and simulation. So if you ask me that 100% those kind of criteria we have to existing or no, it depends on what kind of system that you develop. For example, if about the data transmissions, what kind, we have only some three main concept we try to evaluate, or four concept. It's about the performance, security, speed, and quality. We just only focus on those four. So transfer data, your system can provide the high speed. Transfer data, your system can provide the reliability of your transfer. It means that 100% the receiver can get the package or informations. Transfer data, when you try to transfer from one place to the other place, make sure that no one can steal our data, provide security during our transmissions. And the last one is about um, performance, is about speed performance, about how can you provide a fast transportation compatibility. But in the business world, when you try to kill some product, we will focus about qualification of product, appearance of product, and price of the product. So we have only three quality that you will provide to your customer. For example, I try to build one system or try to build one work or one solution to your customer, and your customer try to ask you about your explanations, why they have to pick up your solutions, why they have to pick up your product. So you will be able to explain to them in three concepts of the business. One is about qualification of your system among the other. And the other one is about it focus about productability. For example, I try to produce the car. So what is apparent of the car compared to the other? And the last one is about the price. Normally, when we provide appropriate solutions, like better one solutions with the qualification and apparent, but if the price too high, you cannot convince your customer to pick up your product. So you have to three of kind qualifications: product, quality, apparent, and price in the same time. So the same as modeling and simulation, some system you have to focus of this kind of criteria, but it's not all every time that every aspect you have to be confirmed. It based on some specification, task, or work that you have to do. So in our use case of the modeling and simulation, they have many terms that you can apply modeling and simulation to work with, but currently for your IT skill, you can provide it in some like appropriate field, because some term is not be able to make it work properly. For example, in the medical research, you try to provide some training or support or research in the medical field. For example, that you try to provide a method to split the cell blood. So can you explain directly to your customer? No, you cannot. So you just use the simulation way and make a model of your system and then input it and then simulate the show to your customer. And for example, if you provide the training to your customer about the way to split the blood cell, so you cannot take the real blood and then, okay, now you take the real blood to show them the system work with this kind of real blood. No, the way to teach or to train your customer, or then you can use the simulation ones. So for the medical field, you can use and get advantage of using modeling and simulation to provide the research, provide training and support to customer. And also some industrial engineering field, they need a modeling simulation. For example, like I saw you previous time about the atomic, in order to provide the electrical energy from the explosion of atom. You cannot like make a real system to show to your customer first. First thing you can use a model and make simulation to show to them. So this is the advantage one that we provide to the industrial engineer. So industrial engineer, they have many kind of sector, but I just want to give some part for the electrical engineer to produce energy power from the explosion of the atomic only. Natural sci nature science, for example, um, weather predictions. You try to provide some input from the wind capacity, for example, the wind flow, the picture of the sky on cloud, and you try to make prediction of the whether tomorrow it will rain or not. So simulations will be useful because you saw some statistical diagram or statistical flow model to them to see if you have input like this, you will get the result like this. If you have faced the current situation that today it's cloudy, the wind flow is like about this kind of speeds, so tomorrow it will be rain. So you take those kind of system in your computer or your picture to show you to your customer about your prediction. You cannot get the real thing to show them because about the weather broadcast, you cannot take the real thing to show. It's like a current living world. Mostly of the previous lecture, we focus about geographical information systems. Like you see at the moment, I would like to control the traffic in the city. First of all, I just use the geographical method to capture all the traffic map. After that, use some API from not only Google, but I just friendly with Google Maps. So you just use API of Google Maps to see the traffic condition, and then you can simulate some method of your work to find the best path to travel from one place to the other place that can spend less time, spend less consume resource, and can provide like a better performance fast time. And some work that will be gain benefit the most is like a simulation work that work out in the military. Why? For example, in the military, modeling of attacking weapons, you make a simulation first. After that, you try to experiment it in real time. So when, for example, in the military, it tries to test with the new weapons. So for example, it is about the missile ones, atomic. So explosion can destroy one country. Can you make it happen in the real world? It can make, but it cause so much dangerous and then affect too many people. So in order to test your weapon, you can make only some simulation. You cannot make the real world. So in military, it will be much more benefit if you be able to use modeling and simulations. And some entertainments. What does it mean entertainment in this case? Like the movie at the moment, Doctor Strange, those kind of material that the author try to produce this kind of movie. by using imagination. How can I teleport one human from one place to the other place? In the picture, in the movie, they just use mindset to build a past, but actually, it's just only come happen in the movie. You cannot make it real in the world. But I'm not sure that next 1,000 years people can do those kind of things. Okay, so in our case in the class, we will focus only about the information technology. We do not provide the use case in the like a movie, but for the first TP class, we will focus on some practical testing. It's not the real TP one that we will focus on information technology, just only testing the idea of your current work. How can you produce the one modeling and then you simulate it with the real systems and not real system, imagination system? We will focus on those things in our practical class for the afternoon sessions. And if you ask me, teacher, in information technology, they have many fields inside. We have security, we have software, we have natural language processing, you have computer visions, you have a lot of things, those kinds of things. So about the project, about the work, we can provide any productivity related to IT sector. It's not like, okay, you have, for example, my skill is about the information security and system security, so I will work only information technology about security. No, the proposed system or modeling system we can propose by many fields. As we are working in the IT sector, so we will provide some system or model some system that related to IT products stability, because you can familiar with our proposed system, and we also can familiar with our proposed case. For example, if our use case I try to use like a geographical system. So do you know about some application in geographic? No, sometimes you know, but some it's not like a useful skill that you can benefit in the future. So in our case, we try only focus on information technology. So for the concept of modeling simulation, try to solve some problems. Like you see in this case, this kind of one model of the process model. We try to use one diagram to show that okay, our application, our software, or our system work the same as this kind of structure. So I use like a process or modeling simulation to solve one problem. So first of all, they try to formulate a problem and build one model, or we can say that one solution can solve the problem. After that, we propose a model. You construct your model in the abstract way, and you conduct experiments. In those kind of things, conduct experiment. It doesn't mean that you have to build the same systems, build it effectively, the real one. Sometimes you just like conduct experiment in the imagination way, or like in the algorithm way. For example, you do not build a real application, you just build one algorithm. After that, you try to simulate a result, so you can produce a result by your simulation. For example, if you can use mathematic modeling, so you can run a simulation in some software tool, and then to run it, it means that you conduct experiment in those software, and then you can get the result. After experiment, you will get a result. So if the result can interpret into the requirement of the system 100% feedback, so you will go directly to conduct document of your study and then implement into the real world to your system. But if your result cannot provide 100% feedback to the hypothesis that you have been set from your problem statement and result, so you have to go back to your problem and model again, and then you modify something, add something more. So this is the kind of process that you can use modeling and simulation to solve one problem by model the process. How can you work with the model? So if you ask me, every project you have to do like this? No, To build one problem, to build one solution, you have many way. In scientific method, you have many scientific structure. You can identify the methodology by yourself, because scientific, everyone have their own methodology. So but actually we have like a one sample. For example, to build one system, if I use water management using waterfall, so some system we have condition. Waterfall is a kind of the method that we try to manage your system, a big one that they have exactly task, accomplished task, that you know exactly that it doesn't change anymore. If you follow that kind of waterfall, it will work. But if your implementation change during your experiment or development, so sometimes you have to revise by weekly. So some people use Scrum Master to manage your project. So the way that you try to solve one problem, you can produce many management tool. It's not focused exactly the same tool. So in this kind of model, it's the same. Do every model have to conduct with this kind of structure? No, you can construct different model. For example, in this one, I use the other flow. So in order to solve one problem, first of all, I try to identify the problem. After that, I develop the model. I simulate my model. After I simulate it, I will get the result. I learn from the simulation about the condition, about the result, about how system performs. After that, I rewrite the model and simulate it again. And I repeat this process until I get one result that can fit back to the hypothesis that I set from the previous one. For example, when you identify the problem, you will set the goal of your solutions. And then based on your hypothesis to cover your goal. So you have to feedback to reach the optimal solution one that can fit back to your goal and then can cover all hypotheses that have been set. So if you ask me about goal hypothesis, how can you set it? You will learn the way how to conduct one work research or one development work in the course of research methodology. So in this course, in those courses, you will learn the way how to make a project management the work. But for our modeling and simulation tool, we just like to try to build some model for your work. So you can use any model of scientific method, because everyone have different methodology. The way to manage your project is different too. So this kind of something that produce, and the one that we pick up for you is just a common way that everyone use it, and then they can get benefit effectively. So as a lecturer, we try to provide one to you by selecting the best one. It's not the real specific one, but like a best one among the other. So if you ask me, can we use the other kind of thing? I say that you can use. It's the same thing. If your manner or your situation, like I show you that one software or one system, you can apply work in this case. But if you go to apply in the other case, it doesn't mean that it will work the same. The same as a political, you have like this strategy to develop your economic, but your strategy does mean that will be comply in my country. The same case. So for example, in order to work with the case study, for example, in this case, I just capture from the slide. So it is study flow of modeling simulation process. For example, when I have the problem formulation, the problem formulation in this case it means that I try to formulate the problems. I try to study about the problem and then I set the solutions. So when I set the solution, I always have to set a goal and then make a hypothesis. So when I have the problem, I have the solutions, and I have the hypothesis. So in this case, you have two steps to work at the same time. So you have to gather, okay, my system what will be the input? You can make data collection. In some case, you don't need the data. So you just skip the process of data collection. You try to model your work as a conceptual, you, because you cannot build the real world. You just like okay, make a concept first. After make a concept, you can make a model transformations. So in this case, during a model transformation, it means that you try to validate your model. So does it look proper and your model is useful or not? So after you make a verification, a validations, if your model looks not profitable and your boss see that oh, your model is not good, they will ask you to redo again. But if your model is approved by your leader, approved by your boss, so you can make experimentation to your model. After you run it, you analyze the result. After you analyze result, if the result is acceptable, you go to documentation and you provide to the development term to the real world. But if you say that okay, my result is not appropriate yet, so you have to go back to the first step again to run it. So this is the process that you work. So to represent one process, we call the model. For example, in this case is a model. How can you manage one project? So this is the specific model. No, they have many kind of model. Some people you can draw a diagram like this activity diagram. Some people you can draw this the other mathematic formula to represent your model. Some people, for example, in web application or mobile app or software applications, you can use case diagram to represent your work. So we have different way to manage a project. Some people they just use okay, I use a waterfall in UML, you will learn about the way to manage your project. Some lecturer use waterfall. Why they use a waterfall to manage your project? So this is the way that they try to model the way can we manage our project. Some people use Scrum Master because it more effectively to identify the change of the system or the change of our task of development and follow up with the process or progress of the work. So they just use Scrum Master to manage your project. And for my case, modeling and simulation cost, we use those kind of structure to manage our work. So we have many kind of structure that can manage our work, but you can choose anything you want, and it's familiar to your knowledge and your capacity. So now I come to the last slide of the current lecture. So our conclusions, our course, I just would like to tell you the definition and useful of our course about modeling and simulations and some simple of modeling in detail, why we need this kind of course and what is the useful for you, the IT guy in the future, if you have knowledge or background from this course. And normally, when you try to pick up the model, they have many model. And our course at the moment, I just introduced to you some mathematical model, process model, physical model. So those kind of model, you can pick up any model to show to your customer based on the requirement that you set. And after that, when you try to make a simulation, sometimes it can be the real-time simulation. So real-time, you can call it live simulations. Sometimes you cannot produce a real system as live. You try to simulate it or build it in visualization. So it we call the visual world. And in some case, it's a constructive. You build some diagram. At the moment, you build diagram. So it's a kind of like a constructive model to show the process of your work. So this is the way that our course try to identify to you. And after that, we will show you some kind of the case that what is the sector that we can apply our modeling and simulation course to. They have many sector and many field that we can provide course. But the active one that we will focus in our course is about the information technology, any productive stability that we can be produced, and we will focus on. And the way that we try to evaluate our system, for example, what is the criteria should our system model have? in order to convince your customer. So we have a lot of criteria about security, reproducibility, about modification ability, about editability, performance. They have a lot of things. So how can we identify those kind of clue word you can pick up by yourself? For example, the goal of your work, for example, about the network transmission package. So what is the goal of the transmission? It means that reliability, security, performance, for example. So this is a kind of the basic requirement in packet transmission. So you can pick up some criteria to make evaluation of your system. Okay, before I go to the Q&A session, for our course, I'm not skillful with the programming language, so you can use any programming language to make our simulation work. But as from previous year, I did not force you to do something because I don't care about what tool you use. I just care about what is the result you produce. So previous years, some students that they are familiar with Python, they use Python. Some students that familiar with C programming, they use C programming. Some students that familiar about JavaScript, they use JavaScript. And some students that familiar with MATLAB, they use MATLAB. So as suggestions, I don't have much background about the programming language. So you can use any programming language installed in your computer directly. But as we are working mostly with the mathematical model, so I suggest you to provide programming language as C programming or Python, or you can use MATLAB, because in MATLAB we have a lot of mathematical library, so it will be easy for you to conduct some experiment with the mathematical formula, especially the matrix. So please install MATLAB if you think that MATLAB is useful for your case. But you say that, okay, I don't want to use MATLAB. I am an IT guy, I am good at coding, or I am good at programming language, so I will use this programming language. So if you use programming language, make sure that you have mathematical library in your repository. Make sure you have it. Okay. So for the first step, we do not need it yet, but after the second lecture, you will have to use it. So actually, you can use Jupyter to install, because in Jupyter you can install MATLAB, you can install Python, or you can install C inside. So you can use Jupyter. It's one kind of appropriate way to show to you, because in Jupyter you can benefit a lot of things. So now for the first lectures, go to the last already. So do you have any questions, concerns, or suggestions? You can ask and talk now.
Hello, teacher.
Yes.
I want to ask some question related to our practice work.
Yes.
Because I'm not really the kind of person that good at theory. I'm more on practice. So I want to know that what will we cover in this course, like what model we gonna build or what we gonna do.
Okay. With the practical use case study, that we will focus on this kind of thing, because in this course we will work with mostly with mathematics, because in the course we will use about design experiment. We use linear functions and Williams, or we can call it a numeric system. So we will use a kind of mathematical formula inside, mostly with mathematics. But how can we apply mathematics in IT information sector? So those kind of things we will focus about. I will say one thing about the computer vision. You will extract some matrix and make operation in kind of matrix. So please make sure that in your computer you have like a tool that you can work with kind of mathematics. And for the input, we get the input from the system as like image data as like a two-dimensional data, and can be many kind of multimedia data. So if you ask me that, okay, in the practical world, what will they do for the first and the second and the third lecture? Mostly it is about the theory. So the theory is just like, okay, make use you understand some modeling and simulation term in specific way of mathematics work. And about the practical, there are many fields that you can apply mathematics, or you can apply the model of the process model and make a simulation of it. So if you ask me the specific use case that we apply in this course, I will say that you will have a multiple use case, because when I try to provide the TP class, most of the TP is about mathematics. And about the project, you will have the more multiple discipline project in IT sector, in computer visions, in natural language processing, and in network, because we will focus on about data security. And so in those kind of things, I will apply some method modeling in the security term. So we will focus on those kind of things, mathematics in about information data. So you can use like computer vision, natural language processing, and the other project is about network security. So you will focus on some work that you try to model some system about security discipline, and then you produce a result. This is what we conduct in our course. So as I told you in the slide, that simulation modeling in simulation you can apply in many sector, however in medical industry, military, but in our case we only apply in the IT. If you ask me that, look, teacher, how about applications development, web development? No, it's not concerned about this one. Do you understand what I try to give to you?
Yeah, I understand, teacher. Thank you.
Yeah. So the other, do you have any questions? Let me check into Microsoft Teams, because today you have a lot of students. Master, how many students rest in year 5 now? Hello.
ខ្ញុំសុំមើលតិចលោកគ្រូខ្ញុំ44លោកគ្រូ44
Okay. Because currently you have only like 29% join the class. Actually, I don't care about this one, because after the class I can generate the attendance list. So I will note as attendance list assignments. And I would like to inform everyone that today I talk too much. It's nearly 2 hours that I talk, but with the current practice of our course explanations and our course will conduct only like a 45 minutes. And after that, we go to the rest to the practical work, because most of the course I do not know about the other lecturer, but for my course, before I give you some work, I have to simulate it and let you see the way it works first. Like a previous year for Anton, I just would like to show you some case that I teach in year 4. Most of the students like fail in my course, but I teach network class. So in kind of network, previously I just give them like, okay, a set of the node, and after that to explain you about the purpose of this kind of node, and then I try to simulate for them to do in the real practical work. For example, I use the simulation tool as a packet research. So if the course we work about switching and routing, so after all students understand about the concept of switching and routing, as a lecturer, as my style, I will try to simulate some functionality of switching to see them, to let them, okay, how can I configure the system by using switching command, and then make them work. And I will pick up someone of the student, because I'm not sure that everyone can follow my manner, or everyone can follow my teaching. So I will ask someone inside the class to do follow my step, to see that, okay, the student can catch up what I mean or not. And some student cannot follow up my speech, or cannot follow up my process to explain in the simulation work. So I let the other member inside class to do it. So student follow student performance. It will better than student follow teacher assessing. So everyone, please be prepared for some case in our class. One thing that I try to mention for you is your situation. For example, I will pick up randomly some of you to make some experiment after I show to you. So please find one kind of the suitable place with a good environment for you, without noise, without interference and interruption. For example, you cannot go to study in the market to noise when I pick up you to say something, and it have noise to um, annoy the other people. And the other thing is, you say that um, I am sorry, teacher. Currently, I am using mobile phone, so I cannot show you the simulation. I cannot show you the problem. So in this case, I will. I don't accept the excuse anymore. So everyone, when you join the class, please join with computer, or you can join both mobile phone and computer. When I ask you to make a simulation up to me, you have to be able to share your screen of your computer. Okay? Do you understand my case?
Yes, yes.
Okay. And the other thing, as I mentioned so far, every year I face with one problem is, after class, I announce to the student to install some requirement software. But after the second TP, the third TP, some students still don't do it. So this year, no excuse anymore, because you are the last year of your engineering degree. So you have to follow some instruction, obey the rule. So as I told you, what we need is mathematics library. So you can use any language you prefer, but make sure that you have mathematics library inside. Second, as a suggestion, because it easy for me, I think, but I'm not sure it's easy for you or not. MATLAB, mathematics is a bit easy, and you also learn MATLAB already. So as suggestions, I ask you to use MATLAB. It's easy. So if students say, okay, especially for the student to pick up a skill as network, so you are not good at programming, just my predictions and my assumption. As me, I'm network skills, so I'm not familiar with programming language. So you can use MATLAB, because you don't need to code anything, because some basic command in MATLAB, you can work with mathematics easily. Suggestions, but you can use any, because as solution provider, I don't care what kind of any solution that you use. What I am caring is what is the result you produce. In the research field, we have one word: we don't reinvent the wheel, because you waste the time. If people produce it already, you just use it. the same as my case. If you can find any application to solve one problem, I don't care. You search from any resource of internet, I don't care. You could be from internet, I don't care. At least you can explain me how does it work and the result give it to me properly. Finish. Because it doesn't mean that you have to start from crash coding A, B, and C. No, it's not like that. If you can have a capacity to find some resource in internet, it means that you're clever already, that you can find solution effectively, easy, and you can know clearly about the process, and you can produce the appropriate result. So it finished for the course. It doesn't concern, okay, you have to start from scratch, build from zero, a equal to input from the user, you read input from user, and then you have some parameter as a constant, a equal to 2 point something like that, and then you propose a result as mathematical formula. No, if you can find any code in internet, and then you can explain me about the process of does it work, and you can produce the appropriate result, so our work is finished. One more thing that I would like all of you to confirm to me today is about our TP class. So our TP class, we have two group A and group B. So first session is group A, the second session is group B. So if you would like to join together just only one session, is it still okay? It is your decision. I am free, so I can conduct two sessions. But if you say that, okay, the first session and the second session is the same because we are study online. So, okay, you can join together. So, Master, please confirm me about these informations before we start our TP class. Okay? Do you want to join only one sessions, or you have to separate? Okay, group A and group B.
Guys,
Okay, now I am out of the idea, or I am out of the suggestion for the first lecture. So, do you have any question? Okay, so now it's 2 hours already. I just would like to re-announce again. For the next lecture, it's not take too much time like this, because just the first day is we have a lot of introduction, we have a lot of theory to introduce to you. So I takes 2 hours that nearly not 2 hours, that nearly is 2 hours that I talk alone. So for the next course, I do not talk much like that. I will like capture around like 30 to 45 minutes about the lecture explanations, and then we will conduct it later about the experiment, about the guideline for the next TP class. For today afternoon sessions, you don't need to prepare any tool, you don't need to prepare any stuff. Just prepare your internet and your computer, because it's a kind of the theory TP, and it's about like knowledge based TP. So you don't need anything structural. Okay, do I need the IDE? I don't need programming language. I don't need some application to run. No, it is not like that. It's just a theory term. So we will see in the our TP class. Okay. Do you have any question more? Antoine, I just would like to, because currently it's like a theory, so I can speak everything in English to our students, but in some technical term, first of all, I will explain you in English. After that, if some Cambodian students still cannot catch up what I mean, I will explain them in Khmer. So in this case, I just would like to inform you in advance.
Okay, understood.
Yep, thank you. Okay. If everyone has no questions, so I would like to stop the class now. So see you in the afternoon session. And Master, don't forget to inform me that the TP session students join together, or we have to separate in two sections.
លោកគ្រូខ្ញុំសូមចេញមុនលោកគ្រូ
Okay, okay. Okay, bye bye everyone. See you in the afternoon.
Bye.
Ốc có.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe.
Yes, bye bye.